So I think those narratives, so that we can understand the nuance. So again, I said it's about the nuance. And the sometimes those qualities are not clear, they are not flexible, they are not it's so I wanted to do that's time. I want to be shared also. It's what I said. How we engage you. That's not just practical, even theoretical. Okay, today, I believe in the practice of as said, and I think all times, especially when you answer, it's how your story is a story. Okay, so we do American face. Also, say that how mythology in ways that I'm flexible. I think very much that they need to be strength. Just to be better. Yeah. I was invited to that very fast. Social media. Yeah. Different forms of geographical. Yeah. But and that so that we can talk about the complexity of plants and birds. That's so those complexities often shape personality. I mean, and just thinking about humans based on ancestral also the humanizing of those characters, which is why this joy. That absolutely how you how joy itself is and I would say that joy in the middle of the next is we are joyful, we are joyful, why maybe joyful, why this kind of against the perfection of that. You know, like you don't really know somebody is something like it's like you're somebody like you see, you don't get so it's to think about and other narrative fiction. All the best. Thank you so much. I appreciate the feedback, Sean. Yeah. I think I'm totally impressed. Yeah, that's I was trying to assistant that in the 20. And then it's possible then I wanted to see also a combination with the department and then now I don't just anybody getting let anything to the and he got like supposed to start in the spring. Being that was the same. First time. The first two periods. When I first time, it was this flashes stands in perspectives. That is good. And that was also like this I will not be any you to us because me. I want those what kind of see that I don't feel that's going to always start to finish and do the conductance to the character. Big level. Already have a system. Analysis and yoga. She don't believe an ocean. They are not years of sense, but they are so this is like glass. I tell you, one thing about this is can't give them an idea. Someone So you're just there's a three of us. So it's open very slow. Is this part of that? That's the shortest but anyway, I could finish with so it's like you say, stand as a chairman. As you're not the university, because you're not the one person, so you're fully strengthened. We went your phone, you know, you want to person. So if you're something, you want to listen. So you want to listen to regularly. Let's go. You're changing about it. It's nothing. It's very job and do. You know, you know, share it. That way, there's no really have to be. Usually, you get it. You know, actually, you are in the local special nurse. There is a difference between that's okay. Then, do you want to? Yeah, yeah. Now, no, send please, I'll be back in 2 hours. Hello. You get it? That's sad, not actually. Yes. No, I told you to. What happened is, I got that now. Oh, this is one of my favorite.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, sir.
All right, so it's time for our panel. Hopefully, the rest panelists will join us. So
Yes, we have one panelist in house.
say that again.
We have one panelist present.
So, the panelists, are we here?
Yes, we are here. I'm here.
Okay. So we're expecting Tony Olatunji. Is Dr. Tony here?
Yes,
Tony Olaniji.
Yes, sir.
Hello. Is Tony Olaniji there?
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much. Then we're expecting Ibrahim Udugbemi. Is he also there?
No, it's not.
Nura Abubakar.
No, I'm not sure.
Okay. So hopefully these panelists will join us. So I didn't hear anything from them that they won't be joining. So I know we have 4 people here. Temitope Shinaya is here. So we're expecting 2 more speakers. So quickly, let me try to see if I can give them a call to tell them that we started. So, and
So,
yeah, I just want to reach out to the 2 of them. So there are 2 of them, and quickly I'm calling their numbers. Okay. Yeah. I've called the 2 of them, so I think that's enough information. I mean, reminder, they should have been here. They know they have a presentation today. So if they're not here, so hopefully they will join us. Let's say they're having an internet issue. All right. Good afternoon, everyone, wherever you are, all over the world. So I'm saying it's still morning. Okay, it's afternoon in Nigeria. It's morning where I am. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, all over the world. It's good to see you all. Welcome to our panel. So the title of this panel is Everything is Imagined, Continuity and Discontinuity in Nollywood Epic Films. So we're talking about Nollywood epic movies, or in Nollywood films in general. So the whole idea behind this panel is to talk about the fact that Nollywood films now overwhelmingly traverse continents and places that were once obscure to the industry, which suggests innovative storytelling and a shift in the filmmaking process that deploys local materials to speak to global audiences through genre mixing and creative adaptation. In the last 3 years, Nollywood films have commanded a massive presence on global streaming platforms such as Netflix, Amazon Prime, and YouTube. Locally, cinema houses in major Nigerian cities now frequently premiere Nollywood films with large audience attendance. However, a closer look at the thematic preoccupations of the overarching storylines of most successful Nollywood films on Netflix and Amazon Prime will reveal a common trend in the industry, a return to historical mythical narratives. In that regard, filmmakers make movies on the biopics of historical and legendary figures, foundational socio-political epochal events, and spiritual balances germane to the cosmic iteration of meanings across the transcendental heaven and our immanent art. Films such as Amina 2021, Anyila 2021, Badamosi 2021, Funmilayo Ransom Kuti 2024, Our Fayola's Son 2014, and The House of God 2024 with Lishabi 2024 tell rich heroic feats of a few individuals and the national tales that undergird Nigerian nascent democracy. Therefore, our goal in this meeting today is to answer the questions that underpin the presentations that our proposals seek to answer. How do cinematic expression create and signal historical continuity in adapted stories? Even if minimal, should filmmakers have the authorial right to a lead aspect of histories they tell in their movies? How does adaptation help filmmakers preserve historical facts without engaging in disruption? Is an adapted story an authentic story? A cinematic adaptation even political? So, to do justice to these questions, to answer a few of these questions, we are supposed to have 4 panelists, but we are having 2, so that is half, so which means we are going to have more time. So the 2 panelists that are here, you both take 20 minutes each to present your papers, and the first presenter that I have that will be presenting today is going to be Tony Olaniji from University of Ibadan. The title of his presentation is Farewell to Gidigbo, Confused Subversion of Indigenous Martial Arts in Modern Yoruba Historic Epic Films. And before he speaks, I quickly want to introduce myself. I'm Olusegun Soretan. I am the chair and the organizer of this panel. So once again, welcome with me, the erudite scholar Tony Olaniji, as he presents Farewell to Gidigbo, Confused Subversion of Indigenous Martial Arts in Modern Yoruba Historio-Epic Films. Thank you, Mr. Olaniji.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is for this opportunity to do this presentation, and it's a subject matter that is so dear to my heart. So I don't know if you can meet me on it. Okay. So this is the title of my presentation. It's Farewell to Gidigbo, Confused Subversion of Indigenous Martial Arts in Historic Films. Next slide. And so when you look at martial arts generally, it's taught across all cultures. Virtually all cultures have one form of martial arts. So in Yoruba land, the traditional martial arts in Yoruba land go by 3 names. Some people call it Eke. Among the Ofa people in Kwara State and some other Yoruba ethnic groups, it's called Jakai. Others call it Emi. Now, traditionally, these local wrestling bouts are staged in the direction of food. That's according to Fallow. And when you look at it, beyond the physicality of these wrestling bouts, these martial arts are employed, they employ the help of deities, spirit of ancestors, and do incantations to easily defeat one or several opponents. That's according to the 2020. So in essence, it's saying that there are 2 dimensions to this martial arts: the physical dimension and the spiritual dimension. And I don't think the spiritual dimension should be surprising to us because we're Africans. So next slide. So when you look at it, the key word in my title is Gidigbo. Before now, I used to confuse the terms. But Gidigbo is the umbrella term for all these martial arts. Because it encompasses various sub-disciplines such as wrestling or grappling, punching, kicking, as well as fighting with machetes. That's according to David Sin's 2014 paragraph 3. And so, this Gidigbo is the dominant combat form in old Yoruba epic films. So it is the dominant combat form. And you know, someone once asked me a question and said, Gidigbo is not. I said, it's simple. Just watch those old Yoruba movies. When they want to go to the war, you hear things like Gidigbo, Gidigbo, hey, Gidigbo, Gidigbo, hey. So when you look at the people who are chanting these, combative songs, you see people who hold spears, who hold swords, charms, and everything. So it encompasses virtually everything that you need to succeed on the battlefield. And so that is why it is used as the umbrella term for everything, every combat that you employ, even while field. Next slide. Unfortunately, this Gidigbo, which is supposed to be a cultural artifact, if I use that word, is undergoing some form of erosion. And that is why my paper argues that some modern Yoruba epic films don't depict the Chinese Kung Fu as a dominant and more effective martial art, thus subverting Gidigbo and the potential acquisition it is meant to arouse in the audience. Already, not many people, especially this generation, not many people know about this phenomenon called, of course, because of westernization and the power of the media and criticism, we're all used to foreign combats. So I'm going to use Jabu as a case study to show this shift. Before I go to the next slide, I want to read something from, I got it from Guardian 2024. Please listen. The founder and president of the campaign for Pekana Beach Resorts, Otumba Wale Akimogwe, has named Gidigbo as a tourism product for the promotion of Nigeria as a choice destination. He did this in continuation of the unveiling of 52 tourism products from his rich repertoire for the Nigerian market, weekly spanning 1 year. So this man of cultural emphasis is promoting Gidigbo. In fact, he chose Gidigbo last year as one of the main attractions for any tourist coming to Nigeria. But film, known for what it is changing the narrative. So that's the irony that I discovered in this man's choice of Gidigbo. Next slide, please. And so when you look at, we're talking about martial arts. We are talking about Gidigbo, and then we have, others, Hausa, even language. Now, when you look at the Chinese Kung Fu, it has virtually conquered all, filmmaking communities. And it can be traced to the success of Bruce Lee from 1971 to 73 and Kung Fu TV series from 1972 to 75. So these two displays of Kung Fu from what Bruce Lee did at this series effectively introduced Kung Fu to the Western popular culture consciousness, according to Ronald 2010. And so what this did was I gave room for the dedication of Kung Fu film schools globally. So Kung Fu started spreading because of the exploits of Bruce Lee and the TV series. Next slide. No, next slide. So as you can see, because of the influence we're talking about, all over Africa now, we have different Kung Fu schools. We have one here in Lagos, as in Shaolin, deep Shaolin. So before now we used to have the Taekwondo, the Judo, the Jiu-Jitsu is not there, the Karate. Those are used as normal sports. You see them in Olympics. But this one, because this is quite dangerous, so it has not been totally absorbed into sports. But what film and the impact of Bruce Lee has done is it has spread this even faster than whatever sports can give to Judo or Taekwondo, for example. So all over Africa, in fact, Zambia is the leader now. There's a Shaolin temple in Zambia, solid. So all over from Nigeria, Zambia, everywhere, you see Shaolin schools everywhere. Next slide. On the internet too, you see skits, very funny. You know, what they are doing is they are promoting the Shaolin tradition. Very lovely, you see. We'll put one spot, pot on the spots. You know, the normal Chinese moves. So yeah, you come and take the spot. Then the fightings and the maneuvering, you know. So very, very lovely. Very lovely. So the next one. Now, this is where, you know, as I'm a children author, teach children, you know, I'm a big, you know, concerned about this because as they are teaching adults, they are also training children. Fantastic. You know, they are building Shaolin temples around Africa. You know, the children they are imbibing the Chinese culture. I know when it comes to Kung Fu, it's beyond the physicality. It's because it is embedded in the Chinese culture. So as you are learning the martial arts, you are learning the culture, you are imbibing the philosophies. So but they are introducing our children to it. Next slide. And so I need to be honest here. When I was in secondary school, I named myself Sultan. Why? Because I love Chinese. I love Chinese films. So what I'm doing now, it's like I'm talking because this is what I love. For scholarship and my love for African studies is what got this. So I love Chinese films, but one thing I discovered is, you see, the spectacle. Normally, we see people fight. When you see Agbero, the way they fight, it's not interesting. You hit me, I hit you back. But there's a way these guys respond to punch. There's a way they respond to kicks that is so beautiful. And so, Orlando and Van said in 2016, there's a universal appeal to a single person, beating up dozens of rivals with amazing dexterity. Those are the factors that are responsible for the global appeal of the Chinese culture. And so, Kaminsky likes and he says it's the transition of violence into an elegant art. It is true. It is true. And so another point is the Chinese martial arts they are practiced not only for self-defense, but as a means of enhancing physical stamina, according to me, 22. You can see. So they are selling the values of the martial arts beyond physicality. You can see that has health benefits. Now, the history of Kung Fu in Nigeria dates back to the 70s, you know, where the films were, you know, shown in cinemas and everything, you know. And then later on, Nollywood adopted, you know, this Asian martial arts, but they were used primarily in contemporary Nollywood films. And so I don't nobody raised an eyebrow about it, but it's just fitting because it was about the contemporary Nigerian story. So let's go to the next slide. So my case study. Now, this is not a contemporary story. It is not historical also, but it is set in historical past. So you can see that the setting shows you a distant time in the past. And so when you now look at this setting, you see Yoruba costume, you see Yoruba people in an environment which is supposed to be Yoruba. But you are seeing this indigenous history being narrated using foreign language. Look at the push. This is normal Chinese drill when you watch a typical Shaolin film. These are normal Shaolin drills, you know. But because this is a still picture, you might at least have an idea of, you know, the understand. So I always go back to that visual appeal. But the question is, are we truly characterizing our past or culture or mixing it for cinematic application? Those are the visual consequences, you know, came to my mind. The next slide. So in the same Jago, because it's my primary, you know, text. When you look at this scene, let me give you a context to it. Boguni, this is Boguni. After Ogundiji, the village, you know, party, Boguni is the best in power, in chance, in everything. But you see, according to the story, the protagonist because of the jealousy of this warrior, Ogun, he wanted to eliminate the protagonist. So the only thing they could do was to pair him with the second person, most powerful person after him. Everybody knew that protagonist cannot defeat this man. So he got close to a chief. The chief was now narrating to him because he was a stranger in the land. So the chief was now telling him about the next battle he's going to face. So it was the chief who introduced this Gogo spout. So in the scenes that follow that introduction, this is the scene that follows the introduction of Gogumi and his power. But instead of the scene to show Gogumi chanting incantation, doing a lot of things that's associated with this kind of setting, this kind of historical setting and culture, we see him displaying Asian martial arts. Look at that. I know the Chinese throwing, gripping, and everything. Look at him. Look at the way he sold it to two, guys. In fact, one thing, because there's an argument that a friend of mine says, no, but it's just normal. I say, I know it's normal. But what differentiates the Chinese martial arts is not the wish. Yeah, that too is beautiful, not the kick. But your reaction to those assets. When a Chinese man kicks you, punches you, there's a way you react, and it's so dramatic. That's why the drama is. Look at that. This is a flipping reaction to a punch. This is Asian. It's not Africa. This is Asian. You're flipping again. This guy, rushing at him. He stabs him. Of course, that angle, the works. He stabs him. The knife stays there. The man removes the knife, turns to him. He didn't do anything other than the bar. And look at the way the guy responded to his kick. Flipping, reaction. These are all marks of Chinese martial arts. And so when you look at this scene, I'm giving the context. So this scene succeeds in showing us the effectiveness of the martial arts, the Chinese martial arts. Lovely choreography, because it is, these are still pictures. You might not see the stuff, but at least you have an idea. So, and the framing also, you can see how the camera angles are framed. You can easily see, even though the guy is in the background, you can see the way it is filmed. You can still see how he beautifully responds to the guy's, the Gogumi's punch. Beautiful, flipping movement. And so, this scene, Kung Fu gains mastery. And so, Bidigo, which is associated with this sport. Next, example 3. Yeah, this is the protagonist. Botija, almost the same thing. Fine. Punch. Look at the way the guy, the reaction. All the spinning reaction. Very lovely. I love it. Also the sword fight. Look at beautiful, well choreographed. So when you look at this also, look at all the elements.
5 more minutes.
Okay, sir. The effectiveness, the choreography, framing, prominence, everything tilts towards Chinese. On the next slide. Agemo is another powerful character in the story. Powerful. Even when you look at Agemo, the way she slashes with knife is highly dramatic. Lovely. You can see the flare. Even the way the flare is. This, it's so, the Chinese way of slashing, and it's lovely. It's lovely, but it is not indigenous Africa. So also in this scene, also the Asian martial arts, displaces the Bidigo. The next slide. So Lishabi, the legend is born. Just look at the poses. Look at this lovely or Asian style. Look at the way they stood. If you have seen police assassin, Michelle Yeoh and Cynthia Rocho, you will see this is a common position choreography in fighting. Lovely, but still it is not. On the next slide, House of God, you can see. Swording, yes, but look at that hands over there. Lovely, but still Asian Africans. Next slide. Next slide, please. And so the cultural implication is the recurrent representation of Kung Fu as the choice combat style in modern Western films might induce the audience to believe that Kung Fu means modernity, while Gillibo might be seen as accommodate. And that is gradually eroding the traditional cultural martial arts as we know it. Next slide. And so I this is a work in progress. I'm not, as you can see. So I interviewed Adamson Ibrahim. He choreographed in conjunction with Excel. He choreographed Jabu, but he did most of the work in Lisha. He a fantastic guy. So when I interviewed him, I tried to be objective that, okay, see, this is what I want to investigate, but from your side, tell me the advantages and disadvantages. You know, the advantages, sales, improve the industry, more money. Or when it goes to the disadvantage, say in a few years from now, our children will not know what Eke is. And they will accept Kung Fu, Karate, MMA as the new kind of fight. He admits. Next slide. Excel, I don't have his picture. He doesn't like to take picture. He's another strong choreographer. He did fantastically well with Amina and other stuff. So the same thing about cultural implications. His work, he says, Western culture is taking over everything. We are deviating from his work. Next slide. And so this Rodriguez et al. 2023, proposed using movies as the main channel for Chinese and African people to get connected. So, proposal that, they are doing. So, and how they are going to do it is that the Chinese and the Africans are going to collaborate to make films. And so you depict your cultures, in equal proportions. But in the same article, this is his confession. So from the look of things, these Sino-African Kung Fu films and cultural exchange that they plan, that it's one way. It's always from China to Africa. One-sided, from the transmitter to the receiver, regardless of the receiver to your understandings and post-understanding. So these numerous challenges, if not properly handled, may lead to more alteration, miscommunication, and loss of cultural identity. Again, admission of the same fear that I have. The next slide. That's it. So in the conclusion is, I haven't discussed with the source directors. When I listen to their arguments, because this is something I love. But it's unfortunate I'm speaking against it in the way. So the guy said, Adamson said, he tried to have the guys in the combat. I said, in what way? He said he took Ijakadi, and mixed it with Jiu-Jitsu, Tai Chi, and I said, fine. But that is what you intend to do. But what we can see, we are saying Chinese martial arts. You have not done your work as you're supposed to do it. And they agree. And so my final recommendation is that you need more nuance and restrictive portrayals of autonomous cultural practices. Whatever you want to do, you should try as much as possible. The African mode should be dominant. I'm not against hybridity. I'm not against evolution of combat style. But when you look generally, globally, film is one of the ways that ideologies being propagated. So you need to be very careful with what you do with films. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Olani, for that wonderful presentation. We appreciate you. So we are going to keep our questions until the second presenter asks that paper. We are our next presenter, so who is going to also spend a presentation. So presentation today is Aroba, some selected historical Nollywood films. And the presenter is Temitope Oshinaya from the University of Ibadan. Temitope, you have the floor now. Thank you. Please unmute yourself, unmute your mic.
I'm sorry, I'm still working on it.
So you are good now, we can hear you now.
Okay. Okay, so I said I'll be presenting on Aroba in some selected historical Nollywood films. And okay, wait, where is this? I'm sorry, I don't know. This network has been frustrating since morning. Okay, historical films are, first and foremost, historical films are fiction. They are fiction, then back up with some other historical or cinematic elements. It has been observed in Yoruba historical films that there are so many narratives, layering, and embellishments that has been included in the film. Hence, this has made the real fact, the real historical fact to be eroded. If not for the pre-knowledge of history, for some audience, they may think that the real depiction in the movies are the true history, not minding the fact that there are some layering that the filmmakers have included in the films. First of all, I would like to describe or explain what Aroba is. Aroba is coined from three different syllables. The R, which is the nominal prefix, the raw, which means to mold something or to smelt an element, and ba means to meet up with something or to catch up with. So Aroba simply means molding up historical facts and allowing it to catch up with the next generation. So the film I'll be considering is Lishabi and Fumilayo Ransom Kuti. I'm trying to share it, but I don't know why it's not. I don't know what's wrong with Zoom this day of all days.
Yeah, you said to
I've been trying to share it, saying that hosts need to permit.
Yes, I've approved this. So you can try again.
Can you see it now?
No.
Okay. Good. Oh, sorry, I'm still working on.
See the network, because I think we have
Network
the
has
approval
been
to share your screen now.
creative.
You know, okay, you can just continue if you're able
I'm
to
trying
share.
to share it. Wait. Okay. I would have loved to share. Okay, so as I was saying, I said the film I'll be considering are Lishabi and Fumilayo Ransom Kuti. A
Do you have
close
your
look
slides?
at this film.
Do you have your slides?
Can I? My slides. No, I only have the document. Okay. A close look at this film has depicted that one, Fumilayo Ransom Kuti is a true history of a woman, Fumilayo, who is a Yoruba and Egba woman. Her cultural background and traditional belief were crucial to feminist view, and she fought against the patriarchal system in Egba society then. However, the depiction of this film, Fumilayo Ransom Kuti, there are so many embellishments that the filmmakers added, which could be misinterpreted by someone who does not know this history of this woman in particular. For instance, the scene where the women protested, the women were protesting at the palace, and Fumilayo Ransom Kuti stood and attacked the leader of the Ogboni society, whereby she removed something like, I don't know, maybe something like a charm from the neck of that woman. I mean, from the neck of the man is not part of the history. Also, this the young Funmilayo Ransome-Kuti was in Abeokuta Grammar School, where the other boys in the school bullied and tried to throw her in the well, is not part of the historical account. Filmmakers made use of this scene just to develop the reasons why Funmilayo Ransome-Kuti had to stood her ground against the patriarchal system and fought for the liberation of the Egba pet women. In the film Lishabi, there were so many embellishments in the film also. For instance, the scene where Lishabi took all his friends, those who were part of the farmers who were part of the Aro society, where he took them for fortification and started mentioning this is Eye, this is Agba, what's the other name, and was kind of fortifying them. And there's this kind of AI avatar image that was displayed. These are not part of the history. Okay. This account is okay. I'm coming. Sorry. God, this I don't know what happened. Okay. For instance, the dramatized battles, these battles for dramatic effect. That is another embellishment. The second one was the romantic subplot. The romantic subplot whereby Abebi and Shokenu were in a romance relationship and it led to marriage. Then the marriage actually led to the end of Shokenu and Abebi. These are not parts of historical facts. The filmmaker, I believe, make use of this layering to bring about or to engage the audience, and that is when I'll come in with adaptation. He actually adapted that history, but not in totality. He adapted the history and make use of other current events to engage the audience. But this adaptation makes history to be eroded. Another embellished part of it is the supernatural element, which I've talked about in before now, where there is a mystical element not recorded in the historic accounts. Although history has it that Lishabi was a powerful warlord, some sin would have been unnecessarily needed, especially the AI avatar scene during initiation and fortification of his warriors. There are some salient issues or salient themes which I would like to talk about in the selected films. First, the oppression and brutality of the Ilari Oyo against the Egba people. That is one. That's one of the salient issue. And the second, which can be found in Funmilayo Ransome-Kuti, that's women oppression in the market and the harsh patriarchal system in Egba society. So Funmilayo stood her ground and where am I reading? Okay. Funmilayo stood her ground against this patriarchal system, especially when she observed that all the Egba chiefs are men. And she tried her best to fight for the liberation of the market women. These are themes the filmmakers are portraying to the society in order to hint them on the necessary steps to take when confronted with this kind of issue Also fight for liberty and justice, which can be found in Lishabi, the film Lishabi, whereby Lishabi fought for the liberty of his people. And while he was trying to gather them together to encourage them, because at first the people were scared of the Oyo Empire, and he told them that Oko, after he had gone to help them in their different farms, and it was his own turn to be helped, he told them that the farm he's taking them to is not the one they will go with cutlass or hoes. Oko amoko mada, oko amoko mada roko, oko anyada yìnbọn, oko má foko mi dáná, ọjọ́ kan là ń kọ́. Mo fẹ́ kí a kọ ẹ̀gbin Ìlàrí Ọ̀yọ́ tòun tọlọ́yọ̀ fúnra rẹ̀. Mo nígbàgbọ́ nínú yín ni mo ṣe pè yín. Mo nígbàgbọ́ nínú yín ni mo ṣe pè yín. Àárò tèmi rèé, ó bẹ̀rẹ̀. So he told them that it is not a farm where they will cultivate with hoes or cutlass, but that is a fight for freedom and a fight against oppression. So there are some layering. I've explained this in before now, that there are some embellishments and layering that are evident in the films, which could alter the historical facts in the film. So therefore, my conclusion is that Aroba is the intention behind every history. The sole purpose of history is to bring about the positive effects on the present and coming generation. The Yoruba believe that when knowledge of the past is known, it will give an insight and anticipation into the future. Therefore, Aroba is an indication that there is an alignment when history is gathered from different perspectives. Even though history is said to be subjective in nature, yet the objectivity lies in Aroba, which the Yoruba perceive to be the superior to history and the one who gave birth to history itself. When they say, bí ọmọdé ò bá ìtàn, á bá àrọ́bá, àrọ́bá ni bàbá ìtàn. Historical films tend to investigate the audience on the expected steps and actions to take in some dramatic situation, which has ensued in the past. Films such as Fumilayo and Lishabi tend to awake the audience to fight for freedom and liberation, regardless of gender and status, in the face of oppression, making reference to past events and history. The audience reception and attitude to historical film could be dominated by questions about the attitude towards producers' creativity, perception, and historical fact. Historical film is perhaps the only film genre that is assessed in two dimensions, which are the aesthetic or creativity and the educational or pedagogical purpose. In essence, the reception of historical films seems to be similar to the reception of literary adaptation, because in both cases, loyalty to historical facts has always been the paradigm to which the production relies. Also, additives to historical facts from the producer's perspectives are also embedded in the production, irrespective of the loyalty and narrator-centric addition. The fact still remains that there is an iota of truth in historical film, events, personality, revolution, which the filmmakers portray actually existed in the past. This is the Aroba the Yoruba are talking about. Building fact and fiction for filmmakers in order to enhance literary and cinematic aesthetics. The minute historical facts must be preserved. It must not be eroded due to importance of history to individual and the society at large. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your presentation. So thank you. Like I said, we have two presenters, so we have ample time on our hands to be able to take questions. But before I do that, so before I ask all the questions, I ask us to begin to feed our questions. So we have these two presenters here today in the person of the first presenter who presented on the idea of so our first presenter presented on, sorry, so my screen is gone. So Gidigbo, so a form of film farewell to Gidigbo. So the whole idea of recontextualizing Kung Fu in the Nigerian film industry. So we had that presentation from the first presenter talking to this new iteration or this new representation of Nollywood films, whereby all we see in most cases will mean a new way of talking to the act of film production that are borrowed extensively from another culture. So in that presentation, Farewell to Gidigbo, Kung Fu Subversion of Indigenous Martial Arts in Modern Yoruba Historio-Epic Films, Tony Olaniji from the University of Ibadan mentioned the whole idea of indigeneity versus visual aesthetics, where he purposely showed us how Nollywood filmmakers in recent time, how they are giving prominence to Kung Fu martial art from the Asian culture in situations or in contexts where the Yoruba or even the indigenous combat practices will have, be enough. So in that context, he is asking the question about what are the filmmakers doing? So even though it's look aesthetically pleasing to have these scenes of combat in the movies, but the question is asking is in years to come, so what would be the cultural implications, for the young Nigerians or for the future of Nigerians who are growing up now to see these artistic forms, embedded films. That is from the first presenter. So the second presenter who talked about, that is the person who just finished our presentation. We're talking about Mrs. Temitope Oshinaya, University of Ibadan, who mentioned a topic on Aroba in some selected historical Nollywood films. In our presentation, so she talked about the realization of certain depictions in passive or what we call historical narratives in Nollywood films. And for her, she ended by saying, minute historical fact must be preserved. So she gave a presentation on a kind of what you call a kind of a kind of comparative analysis of historical facts versus represented facts in Nollywood films. So arguing that minute historical facts should still be preserved to the best of the filmmakers' abilities in Nollywood films. So forms like embellishment, adaptation, borrowing, and even aesthetic variations shouldn't have distorted the real historical facts of the matter that Nollywood filmmakers are presenting on. With this recap, so the floor is open, so we are free to ask our questions. Feel free to ask your questions from the presenters. Any question you may have, feel free to ask them before I ask my questions. There are two presenters. We might as well turn this to a kind of a roundtable discussion about this whole idea of continuity and discontinuity in Nollywood films. What is to be discontinued, or what are discontinued and what are being continued in Nollywood films? So I will welcome your questions. Questions from the audience, questions from those who are online and those who are present in-house.
Question, yeah.
Questions?
Yeah.
Okay.
Question. Okay, so I have two questions. I have one for Tony and I have one for Temitope. So the one for Tony, the question goes like this: does the Asianization of the African martial arts negate the purpose of these historical films, which is to immortalize history and help the younger generation have knowledge of the past? Like, does this Asianized fighting and everything doesn't negate the actual message that the films are trying to pass across? Yes.
Okay, you see, when you talk about films and message, it's subliminal. The way messaging works in films is highly subliminal. So you wouldn't know Now, these guys who are coming up with opening Shaolin temples all around Africa, there is an ideology there, and the ideology is to propagate the Chinese way of life. Now, they are not direct. If you have seen Hollywood movies, the way they do, the way they pass them, when you start from, see, look at the Chinese films. The selling point in every Chinese film is martial arts. Compare them to maybe Indian stories or American stories. Those ones have plots, solid, but Chinese films, you kill my master, I take revenge. That's the summary of virtually all the Chinese games. And so, what you need in that is the martial art. And the martial arts, beyond physicality, is embedded in the Chinese culture. So, if we look at it and see, okay, it does not negate the historical, maybe perspective that these guys are trying to project. Well, I might not totally agree. Do you know what? In my interaction with second stunts director, he made a complaint. And what's the complaint? The complaint is that other filmmakers now, and that's the fear. He said other filmmakers are just using character, they're just using kung fu, even in films where it's not needed. I said that's the fear. So before you know it, now look at a film came out. I remember the title. There's another one, Yellow by Twin. It's 6 martial arts. There's one by Yamoto. I've forgotten the title, something really good. The same thing. In fact, when you see highest highlights, even more than Jabu, because it was Jabu that really pushed it. So, fine for now, just like what you said, the impact might not be immediate. Yeah, as you are seeing it, it doesn't look as if it's doing any harm. But in the long run, people are adopting it. And when they adopt it, the Gidigo or Eke or Ijakadi, which is indigenous, is gradually being eroded. So that's what I would say about this.
So that's like soft power.
Seriously, soft power.
So the question I have, okay, can you hear us? I think can you hear us? Okay. Thank you, Bob. So I think can you hear us now?
LSA, are you back?
Yes, you're back.
Okay.
Okay, so my question for Senator goes like this. Let me first, okay, you mentioned something. You said the adaptation of this film makes the history eroded. So my question to you now is that why do you think adaptation erodes history? Because for younger generations, for someone like me and people who are the Gen Z, let me put it that way. Most of us do not even know what who Lisha is. Yes, for some of us who are from Egba, we know that okay, they say Abeokuta, Lisha Biangwa. But we just know that name and maybe snippets of okay, maybe this is stuff about who Lisha actually is. But we don't know what he did. We don't know how he died. We only get it to maybe we go to Lumoro and they just say some stuff. So I believe that as much as these filmmakers do not maybe stick loyally, like completely to the historical parts, I still think that they still create awareness and they still kind of in some way immortalize these heroes. Because let me put it this way, in literature, we say we have fiction, we have non-fiction, and then we have faction. We have faction because there are some stories that are actually true, that are actually non-fiction. But then to elaborate the story, to make the story more rich and more elaborate, we add a little bit of fiction in it to just pass across the message the way we want it to be received. The reason I'm also asking this question too is that when you were talking about Funlayo and Somputi, you said the scene between Funlayo and Somputi and the Ogoni when she snatched the charm from the Ogoni's neck is actually not historical because it don't really happen. And you said the part where in school a bully pushed her into the well but is also not in history. And you also mentioned something. You said the role Funlayo she plays is a feminist role. She portrays feminist views. So if I'm going to put it this way, during that time, there was nothing like feminism. We only saw a woman, during that time, they only saw a woman who was trying to fight for the rights of women. But now we have what we call feminism. Even then, in the Western world, we only had pro-feminism. We didn't have the actual feminism that we have now. So I believe that the reason why that thing was brought into play is to show that, okay, now patriarchy exists, feminism exists, and we are trying to show that, okay, this is what Funera is actually fighting against. So I do not think that it's actually a world history. I think it brings history into play, and then it brings current happenings, it brings modernization in it. Because that modernization in it helps younger generations who have no idea what happened then. That was understand what happened then better in our own way. So yeah. So the main question again, if you want to ask, is why do you think adaptation erodes history? Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you for the question. I never said adaptation erodes history. What I said was when filmmakers are adapting, during adaptation, the narrative additives, those things that are added to make up the story should not override or should not dominate the true history in that film because of the coming generation. For someone, for instance, in Lishabi, it could be misinterpreted that truly Shokenu was Lishabi's true friend, and he died in the process of fighting for his rights. And that's fortification part. There are some unnecessary scenes that were included in that film. Truly, adaptation helps to preserve history. But when narrative layering it tends to override or it tends to dominate the truth in the film. So that is my argument, that filmmakers should try as much as possible to make sure that the true history, the true historical fact in their film is more elaborate, is more portrayed like than other narratives, than other additives that are included in the film.
All right. Before we take other, okay, are there other questions in the house?
Okay, yes, there are other questions in the house. I'm just going to see them. You can go into questions.
What's this question here about whether see one thing is clear, as a student of history and a filmmaker, I think there is a level of responsibility for a filmmaker who's making a historical film and which he claims to represent an aspect of our past. There's a level of responsibility from the account of that filmmaker. Because a historian is responsible for holding the past, using facts. So if a filmmaker now takes the role of historian, it means he is also responsible to follow or to adhere to those rules that govern writing history. But then in filmmaking, we know that there's what Johnson said about invention. Because we do not just know everything, teach you everything you say. Just like a historiographer will write. It is just 10 minutes. So you have that liberty. That's why historical scholars introduce the issue of invention that you use symbolism about information to compress information and to give you that. I think we need to create that balance and give filmmakers that not just hand over that cinematic license to you as so. Thank you.
Thank you. Next person.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. Might not really be
a question is just integration and living. I love the fact that the first speaker, also, I love the fact that he did a comparison and gave us the conflict reverse of the topic you are what you're talking about, Django and others. If I know what you feel, I don't really understand what you're saying. Sincerely, I still want to say to the second speaker, when you are speaking about a thing or a movie, somebody might be a novice. Just let us know what you're talking about, who you're citing, who are the people involved, what are the characters that they played, and all of that. Then for the first speaker, is there any invitation to this conclusion? Because I was thinking about, when I go down there for first, I've done the yoga, I'm not an invitation person, but being the fact that I work in the media, you have to do a little of everything. The way you're playing, especially when it comes to people music, you have to be careful because of everything. When I look at the for the first time about my life, we didn't go to Chinese to go and mislead that. Yes, they go and learn. It was so low that something same is part of it. Is there any information that I think there is any? I think you should add it to your paper for it to be more precise. Okay, I'm just doing something there. Okay, I was going to ask if you did any interview. That was when you reflected the two people of the interview. The same thing with my sister too. I think you're talking about Mr. B and Kulaya or something. I'm going to think as well. I need you to give us the whether quantitative or quantitative or the person you interviewed that we tell us more about Aruba. I'm not a Yoruba by birth, but I'm a Yoruba by marriage. So let's know. Those of us that don't really know the terms, if not because I've heard of the Dandago when they say, "Ooh," they'll shout, "Ooh, give it go." I won't even understand what they're saying. So those are the things that we need to let us know in our papers. Thank you very much.
So thank you so much for that question. It's very nice. My first question is to I don't know if questions section. The first speaker, you were talking about the scenes, the fight scenes of everything. So what you actually explained, but I didn't that probably just showing to actually why that audience understand so that everyone can actually relate with it. So they don't want to see this movie because Nigerian context of Africa and they're trying to avoid that abuse, but they're trying to use it for dramatic plays. So my argument now is that that we also have some very movies that they are also using ski. I was trying to write the title of this movie. So I don't know, have you seen Orisha? Orisha by I think there was a place where they are fights where they'll be chanting their incantation and they will really chant something. I think is that actually a form of people?
Yeah, it's part of it,
It's part of it. And so you said Kimbo also involves using their machetes, using exchanging tools and everything. But I said this is also the same too in this Asian martial arts. So how can we get between Kimbo and the Asian martial arts? So I think that's yes, that's all. And the second question is for the second presenter, where he was giving us instances from Kunera when she said where she removed the chant from the Ogoni and where they were trying to put Kunera inside the way when she was in school. So and she said this in the so my question is how she know that they are not like where did she get a source of information and how can she back this up there? Yes.
But just say the Adamson the subject when an invitation say what was trying to do to try and match local comments with foreign comments. And he said the idea is just for the things to have been matched. The question I asked us, the question I asked us, I don't make sense because he told me that some foreigners came, they came to shoot from Nigeria. They saw his skits. He started all these countries of us skits. That was where Femi saw him. And I asked him also that the combat style, was it written in the script? Was the combat style described on the right? So that was that. Was it described in the script? Or they invited you and we incorporated it? In fact, I said the film was about a week. The shoot was about a week when they invited them. And there was no time, nothing, just improvised. So, but the difference is that naturally when you look at, even when you look at Asian martial arts generally, when you look at maybe judo, for instance, judo is not that stylized. The essential aspect of judo is grappling, gripping, grappling, the ability to, to throw. That's what it's all about. Karate, yeah, they use ki. When you see sumo wrestling, you know all those Japanese very fast, gripping. On Chinese is highly stylized. In fact, when you check the original ones, when they started, them. When they were using animal features, all those crane, snake, monkey, all those stuff. So those are the things that attracted us growing up as kids. I think that was why it took them time. They have not even adopted Kung Fu into the Olympics. So when you say typical Kung Fu, it's different. When they kick, there's a way they roll. When they punch, there's a way they do it. It's different. When you see, you notice. Do you understand? So I'm not totally against innovation. What I'm saying is that just like what everybody has said about what the second presenter has said, that okay, history and artists, this license that they take, we need to be careful because it's a responsibility. We are documenting history. And one argument in filmmaking is that when you are adapting, there's a dilemma. Is that do you want to stay faithful to the original source, the original material, or do you want to embellish so that the audience, because naturally history in the raw sense, the way it is horrible. Yeah, it's horrible.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's
All right. So,
okay.
yeah, so thank you, Dr. Adeniji. Quickly, I want to jump in because we have one of the presenters, just showing up. So, and since he's here, I would like us to probably give him 10 to 12 minutes to do his presentation. But quickly before I do that, so probably maybe I'll come back to this, but I may not have time to come back to this. When you talk about adaptation, somebody mentioned about Lishabi, that Lishabi, there were no, that for them, so the history of Lishabi, probably there's no way for them to know how Lishabi lived. This is the problem with adaptation. There were books written about Abeokuta. So A.K. Ajishafe wrote a book in 1916 called The History of Abeokuta, where the detailed history of the Egba movement, their migration from the source to Abeokuta was, documented. And also, Oluwolabi 1982 wrote a book, Lishabi Agbongbakala, specifically to talk about Lishabi. So, new generation of scholars or people who don't really read history, and that's the problem with Nigeria. Nigeria don't teach history. So, there are materials that could have guided these writers in adapting to what is generally known as the story of Lishabi. So not because there are no materials, but because they failed to do so. So that is their poor research. So if you want to know more about the history of Egba, Lishabi, and so on and so forth, how the different quarters came together, there are books about Abeokuta and every city and towns in Nigeria, especially Yoruba land, that you can read about. But just that new generation prefer to look for things on social media. So that's the point. Okay. With that said, because I have my own comments to make, but I'm going to quickly invite the next speaker. Sorry, everyone, to talk about his presentation. That is Reimagining History, a comparative study of New Nollywood's remake of Yoruba historical epic films by Ibrahim Odugbemi, Indiana University. Ibrahim, you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, Dr. Segun Soetan. Thank you, everyone, for joining this panel. And I apologize for joining late. It's just some family situation. I just came back from the hospital a few minutes ago. So, yes, my presentation is titled Reimagining Histories, a comparative study of Lishabi and Bashorunga in old and new Nollywood, in old and new Nollywood. So, I wouldn't know, can I share my screen?
Yeah, the
Is
first
that
one.
fine? So maybe that will help us to follow better. Yeah. Let me share my screen. Let me share this. Okay. So this with this paper, what I'm trying to do is to look at the old and new Nollywood makings of historical films, Yoruba historical films, like those on Lishabi and Bashorunga. So I examine the changes in aesthetics if we compare the two. Comparing with that, I am comparing Lishabi Agbogbo Akala 1995 and with Lishabi The Uprising 2004. And I'm also looking at Bashorunga 1996 with House of Ga by Bolanle Peters 2004. So I try to look at the changes, the differences in the productions, and also look at how audiences react to especially the new Nollywood production. So what I observe is that after the new Nollywood remaking of these films, the viewers were going back to the old ones that are, comparing House of Ga to Bashorunga, comparing Lishabi the Uprising with Lishabi Agbogbo Akala, and that is why I thought it would be a good attempt to bring these materials together. So I try to look at how Nollywood has evolved in this paper from what we now call old because of the format, basically mostly video film format, and as we now have it in digital and big screen form. So my methodology, I think it's important to talk about that. It's a comparative textual and visual analysis of this film. I also use digital ethnography, looking at how audiences are responding to these films. Also cultural studies, oral history, biographical criticism, and some of the key scholars in this paper are all Apaduroy, Berber, and Vinegar. So from aesthetic point of view, what I've noticed about this film is, of course, that, as old Nollywood, low budget production, low cinematic effects, there is a difference. Old Nollywood is known for that static camera, limited sets, and to a very large extent, oral storytelling is very close to the source. So in old Nollywood, for instance, until recently, there was nothing like film villages with their own aesthetics. These films are set in rural areas themselves. They are more or less set in the original sources, as it were. But with the new Nollywood, we now have high production values. We have streaming platforms. We have a high focus on spectacle, so to speak. And I think this is one thing that differentiates the two from the other. One is more of high productions. And this is one of those things as I will rightly talk about, that audiences are talking about. There still seems to be that emotional connection to the old, even though it's old. to the old format. People still seem to, to like it because, even though it's old, it's like, it's our own thing. It doesn't have this westernized, westernized aesthetics, so to speak. There's no so much focus on spectacles. There's no so much focus on appearance, unlike what we now have in the new Nollywood. So
5 more minutes.
okay. So there has also been thematic shift. So in old Nollywood, we have this focus on the moral universe, on that effort to liberate the people, as we have in Lishabi, for instance. But in new Nollywood, we have more other things coming in. We have, for example, in House of God, for instance, we get to see Bashonga beyond his personality as a warrior, as a wicked person. We get to see some things behind what he did. For example, the encounter between Bashonga and the newly installed Aláàfin of Ọ̀yọ́. They had an encounter during their childhood, and because of that, he did not want him to become the new Aláàfin of Ọ̀yọ́, and he asked him to, to commit suicide, the self-suicide practice. So in there are also gender dynamics in these films. We get to see in House of God, for instance, we get to see the character of Agboyin coming more alive. And we get to understand how these gender dynamics, shape the fate of Bashonuga himself. So another thing that I think have changed is of course the deployment of costume. New Nollywood seems to focus so much on costume, elaborate costume that and this is one of the things that the audience have against it. Audience are talking about, authenticity, the need to bring in spectacle, and of course, the need to also maintain authenticity. But, one thing that has been a part of New Nollywood from the beginning is the effort to attract diaspora audience. And that is another thing. We've not seen so much from the diaspora audience, especially in online, talking about this film, in terms of how Americanized they are and whether they accept it. But it seems that to the audience based in Nigeria and Africa, for instance, this is one thing they want to see at its minimal. They don't want to, they still prefer that the authenticity is maintained, even though there is focus on spectacle, there is focus on cinematographic attraction. So in old Nollywood, as I said earlier, there is that focus on the source. So what we can call oral immediacy, which is much part of even all other genres in old Nollywood. But with the new Nollywood, there is a global sophistication. There is, in terms of costume, in terms of cinematography, in terms of everything that comes into packaging a film production. So because of that global sophistication, the tension around fidelity is very high. The tension around authenticity, is very high. Of course, both waves are reshaping historical consciousness of the Yoruba in that degree. There is that closeness that comes with new Nollywood, but there is that there is that distance. There is that closeness in old Nollywood films, which the audience think it's close to them. It's close to their reality. But with the old Nollywood film, there is the focus on global sophistication. And that is what is bringing in that tension of fidelity. Thank you so much.
So you're muted. Please unmute yourself.
I thought I unmuted myself. Yeah, thank you so much for that wonderful presentation. So, like I said, I like the brevity because that gives us about 10 more minutes for us to still ask questions and then be able to continue our deliberation. So, Mr. Odugbemi talked about New Nollywood and Old Nollywood, and interestingly, so the films he chose, Lishabi and Bashorun Ga, or the House of Ga. So this test, so they've been subject of analysis by Temitope Shinaya, and also they complement the test, the filmic test chosen by Dr. Olaniji in this presentation for the panel today. So we can continue to with our Q&A, but there is just something I'd like to, that I really want to, sorry, so the alarm here. I really want to point out. So, and I'm going to be asking these panelists so that way we can carry our questions. So, the questions to the three panelists that I'm going to be asking you, I have them here. So, the whole idea of indigeneity versus visual aesthetics. So, let's complicate this the scenarios. We talk about Gidigbo, we talk about Kung Fu. So, are we saying that that kind of inclusion, so should we call the Kung Fu immersion in New Nollywood films an adaptation, a borrowing, or what do you think is ongoing? So that's part A of that question. Also, a way to challenge the history of Kung Fu, that Kung Fu is universal, not necessarily an Asian art. So is that a possible way of thinking of this? And also, for the purpose of thinking again about the concerns of filmmakers. So are filmmakers cultural mediators? Should that be their responsibility? Are they to mediate the culture? Are they to say, okay, it's our responsibility to preserve the culture, or is it their responsibility to make good movies? So my question goes further to say, are Nollywood filmmakers, saddled with the responsibility of anthropologizing African, Nigerian cultures in their movies, or they just want to make movies for movie's sake, for the sake of laughter, for the sake of enjoyment? So what should be their, political concern? What should be their own, artistic concern in the global stage? So as we complicate these differences in comparative, production of Nollywood films, insertion of elements, adaptations, and the rest. So what do you all three think about these questions?
Yes, you can go ahead.
Okay, thanks, Doctor, for that insight. So for me, I'll look at it this way. Filmmakers, I believe, I'm a filmmaker also, and I believe that as a filmmaker, you don't just look at film. Because let me use my own subject matter for example. The Kung Fu, the Gidigbo that I'm talking about, the Chinese are intentional about spreading it. So they didn't just, because they could have as well, adopted other forms of combat, and of course, there are martial arts too involved, but the evolution was still grounded in their culture. And when you look at other Asian martial arts, you can easily identify them because they are different. When you see a judoka, for example, the combat side is different from Kung Fu. So, of course, there's a point in what you said that, and the truth is that Kung Fu has been globalized. We cannot live with the fact. It has been globalized. At the same time, we can do something with our indigenous martial arts. Yes, we can innovate, we can add some things, but without the sizzles, there are some obvious elements of Asianization that can be trimmed. It can be total, I understand. But so there's a way because it's happening. For instance, when you look at Juju music, for example, There's a particular instrument called the steel guitar. It's different from the normal guitar that you strum like this. This one, you place it on your laps and you use your left hand to pluck the strings while you do something like a steel, round steel like this, to play like this. So it's this swelling sound. And that instrument is indigenous to the Hawaiians. But what King Sunny Ade and the Obinisa have done with that instrument, when they play it, you think it's indigenous to us. That's what I'm saying. So we can domesticate. We can bug, but we can also domesticate. It's a serious work. But unfortunately, filmmakers are a bit lazy in the area of history, and other forms of aesthetics. So if you are a filmmaker, I believe it's their duty to document history. But if they want to innovate, the innovation must be grounded in the cultural realities of their country. That's what I would say for now.
Yeah. Thank you. Any one of you would like to jump on the whole idea of indigeneity versus visual aesthetics? So which one should take prominence? So indigeneity, so being a cultural purist, of visual aesthetics that will enable filmmakers to sell more films globally. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think, thank you, Dr. Sheto. I think I will just suggest a third option of something in between the two. In the long run, everything boils down to economic market is saying. And as the first speaker rightly said, Kung Fu, for instance, is already globalized. So as something indigenous to a people, it took some time before it grew into something global. So you can't just introduce something new, for instance, and expect it to go global. The economy, market interest is not emotional, it's just, and that is in the long run what the filmmaker is after. And like anyone, you produce to make profit. You need to put something on the table. So one needs to go for something in between, so to speak. You are trying to preserve a culture, but you are also trying to make good movies. And of course, we should also be maybe as it were, open to the meaning of culture. Sometimes when we talk about culture, what is even culture? Is it just talking about something long in the past? And if we look at culture, by the time in the process of bringing something into other formats, there is bound to be some recoloration, so to speak, some remodifications. So Puritanism may not really work. We need to be open to this. We need to know that the global world we are selling to, they are not us. Americans are not Yorubas. We shouldn't have any emotional connection to think they will care about what we are doing, So we should be open to that, so to speak. We shouldn't, Puritanism will not work definitely for filmmakers. So they should just try to balance, the two between core Puritanism and market interest. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Oshinaya, do you have something to say to that?
Yes, thank you. Just to buttress on what Mr. Odubemi said, that they should be able to balance the two, because they shouldn't be mindful of the profit alone or the market alone, but they should be mindful of what they are selling. They are selling the Yoruba culture, they are selling the Yoruba tradition, the Yoruba language. Then the depiction of what the products they are selling to the world matters a lot. So they should be mindful of the indigenous story, and not just the visual aesthetics alone or the economic gain alone. So just to buttress on what they have said, filmmakers should be aware that they are storytellers. They tell the stories of their own society, and it is what they put out there that the global world will accept. So they should be mindful of the manner and the means of portraying that story so as not to give the bad impression or misrepresentation of their society. So that's my own take on this.
Yeah, thank you so much. So, I mean, I will still get back to those of us inside the room. So, I mean, we are within time. We can still like extend for maybe 3 or 4 more minutes. So, there's a movie called Suki. It's made in 2025. So, Suki has element of physical combat in it. So, to you, sir, Dr. Laniji, so have you seen the movie Suki? So,
No, I have
and
not.
what would be, have you?
I have not.
Okay, so Suki is on Netflix, and it speaks to the idea of combat. So there's a prison system whereby prisoners will have to compete in local wrestling or kind of martial combat competition, so that then it's kind of a back street or a kind of underground competitive system whereby the wardens make money off of prisoners fighting, dying, but it's purely it's purely traditional combat wrestling. So and I think that idea speaks to what you are saying, that if Kung Fu has been majorly globalized, so with an intent of recolonization or retaking of the world by the Chinese, so then maybe that form of wrestling that is depicted in a Nollywood film is also an attempt by the filmmaker to say, hey, we have something that represents us. So to the three of you and to the member of the audience, so I have this question that I really want every one of us to think about. So as we talk about the whole idea of adaptation, histories, continuity and discontinuity. So my question is there an authentic history? So it's a complicated question. If the answer is a yes, and the answer is a no. So how then do we talk about continuity and discontinuity, especially when we know that cultures are not static, they are dynamic? So do we have anything called authentic history or authentic culture? And how do these two terms, are amenable to concept like continuity and discontinuity? Member of audience can feel free to join in. And the presenters, this is a question for you as we wrap up this session.
If I may jump in, and looking from from the little experience I have in biographical study, I think there is just nothing authentic history. And I think, and that is because in the long run, that is not the focus. At least in the list for the person retelling it, your own biases and limitation will determine what you are saying. So the focus in the long run is not to make something authentic, because there are many factors that are already there, which I think are natural, are beyond your control, that you may not even be aware of. Because every history to me is a retelling of something that has already been done. You cannot fully retell something. You cannot fully represent it, and that is because you are already doing it through another media. You are already doing it through a format, and every format has its own limitations. So that with that general focus, there is nothing authentic history, because it is not bound to be. But of course, we can now talk about major points in the retelling of the history, which I like to call salient. These are salient points, these are saliencies that you cannot just do without. And talking from some things I've done in the past, for instance, you cannot just talk about Nelson Mandela and ignore apartheid. Like, you get the point. That is the failures. That is what makes his identity. So I think the focus should just be on the major cause. And of course, the major cause will also be politicized, and I think that is that is what producing knowledge and engaging these things interesting. We will politicize it. We will have our own perspective.
Yeah, thank you. We have 2 more minutes to leave. So any other contribution to that?
I would like to say something. So there is no authentic history, because even from the word history, the word can be segmented into two parts. Is story. So history is subjective. I said that during my presentation, that history is subjective. It is from an individual perspective. But just like Mr. Ojugbemi said, but there are salient points. The fact that Funmilayo Ransome Kuti fought for the liberation of Egba women, that's a known fact. But the means by which it is being told, there must be there's going to be some addition and subtraction, some omission into that story. So, but the fact remains that there is a fact, there's a sure fact that this thing actually existed, just like the Nelson Mandela's story and apartheid. So history there's no authentic history, and that is what the Yoruba describe as aroba. That's what the Yoruba describe as aroba, something that is recasted to another person.
Yeah.
So there must be omission and some other addition in it. So there is no authentic history. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So quickly, one more comment before we go, and then we are good to go today. So any comment from the member of the audience?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, just to portray what my colleagues over there are saying about if there is authentic history. Actually, even in his car, what is history now? You are told of that history is an unending dialogue between the historian and his past. As you dig up more facts, then the exchange, continues from different perspectives. So it's just so there's nothing like history. Thank you.
So this is a parting question to every one of us. So an interesting panel. So, and this for our panelists. So if there's no authentic history, if there are no authentic, if culture is dynamic, so why then do we say that filmmakers are not free to be creative as they wanted because they are recreating and they are using a format? So that's my question to every one of us as we engage more with the whole idea of continuity and discontinuity. So in Nollywood film, what is discontinued? What is to be continued? And I think we are talking in the realm of authorial, authorial license here. The license to create, the license to elite, the license to embellish, and the license to add more to it. So with that, I really want to thank every one of us. Thank you, the three presenters. Thank you for a wonderful job done today. And to you, the audience, I really want to thank every one of you. Thank you all for coming. So let's continue the conversation outside of this panel. Have a wonderful day. Bye.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.